I think every one of us has been waiting for this. Tyler breakdown. So let's see what he has to say. Because I remember yesterday, the video that I did yesterday, I was talking about Nick and Derek are still friends despite the battle between them in Pittsburgh. And somebody in my comment section would say, oh, you sold out, you a clown, you this, you that. But let's be honest about it. These people, they are still friends, but they battle on stage. That doesn't make them enemies. So I don't know why the fans want to make it like they're both enemies and they're supposed to be cussing each other out and all of that. I like people, please. My own content is not about cussing people out. It's just a good vibe. It's a good constructive criticism. That's it. It's not about cussing each other out, calling people out of their names. Please, I don't do that here. If you subscribe to me and that's the type of energy you have, please, you are welcome to unsubscribe, okay? I like being positive. I like positive people. I like positive energy. So the world is full of too many chaos already to be engaging in all that type of energy because of a battle that happened between. So let's listen to Tyler.
Hi everyone, Tyler Mannion here, NBC and IPB Pro League Vice President, and this is going to be the Pittsburgh Pro Men's Open recap. Before I get into everything, I want to say what an incredible weekend, what an incredible show. The athletes showed up, brought absolutely incredible packages to the event. And of course, this is the Open Men's Bodybuilding event. And I'm going to sit here and I want to first address, the claims of robbery, politics, and everything that everybody, wants to say from over the weekend. So obviously, I think the term robbery is used very loosely nowadays. It's used a lot in fighting, in boxing, in MMA. Of course, it's used in any sport that has judges. But I think a robbery is when really you think two people aren't that close to each other. And if you take all biases out of it and try to be as objective as possible, Nick and Derek were extremely close to each other this weekend. Each one has strengths and weaknesses that counteract the other. Okay, so robbery, I don't think really applies here. Can you disagree with the decision and believe that Nick won 100%? I mean, after I go into my recap, you can disagree with even the poses I'm going to give you because in my opinion, 5 out of the 8 poses, you could argue for either one of them. I think only 3 poses were extremely clear for one person or the other. The other 5 were literally toss-ups. I can understand the argument for giving either person each of those poses. And when it comes to politics, let me talk to you about politics for a little bit. It doesn't make sense. Nick has the greatest fan support, in my opinion, of any open bodybuilder. Obviously, the storyline for the Olympia would have easily been made better if Nick just won the show. So this shows you that the judges are not caring about this. It's not on our minds when we're sitting at the table. We're trying to be as objectional as possible in a subjective sport that we're still looking at how each person fits the criteria. And both these guys fit the criteria in different ways. Now, let me give you guys an example of why politics also makes no sense. Last year at the New York Pro, Nick won a controversial decision. I was the head judge at that show. In my opinion, and I don't usually do this because I like to talk in more general terms when I'm doing breakdowns. So I don't say I voted for this person or I didn't vote for this person. In my opinion, Martin won the New York Pro last year. That's how I scored it. I'm the head judge. At the New York Pro, we have 5 judges. But, at the Arnold, the Olympia, and now the Pittsburgh, we have 9 to 11 judges on the panel. Highs and lows are dropped. This way, one person's opinion is not going to say, that's it. It's this person's opinion, and that's who wins the show. So somehow, if politics played a part, Nick won that controversial decision that me as the head judge of that show did not agree with. But obviously, on the panel, I was outvoted, 3 judges to 2. Nick wins that show. Now this weekend, I'll reveal right now, I'm one of the judges that favored Nick to barely win over Derek this weekend. But I can clearly see the argument of why Derek won the show as well. So I'm the vice president of the organization. This just shows you that I'm giving you 2 shows right now that I'm judging at. I'm right at the center of the panel, and the show ends up going the other way. So I feel like I'm going to address it again. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of negative comments, people disagreeing or whatever else. But at the end of the day, this is a sport that is judged by human beings. Okay, so people are not going to agree. We do the best that we can. And as the vice president, I do not always agree with the decisions that are made on the panel, but I always feel like there at least is an argument and it makes sense for why the other person won. So just getting that out there before we go into this, and hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of insight and understanding into, how close that was and how hard it is when the shows and the athletes are super, super close to each other. And again, I know a lot of people are unhappy, but I just think it's great that the fans are supporting our athletes in one way or another and care so much and are so passionate about the sport. So even though there's a lot of negativity to it, it still means that you guys care and you guys really support our athletes. So I can only say thank you for that. All right, so now let's get into the review of the contest. Again, I guess before we even do this, everybody saw that it was a tie score. Nick was winning at prejudging, Derek was winning at finals. Again, the score was 7-8. So Nick had 7, Derek had 8 after prejudging. Finals, that score was reversed to make it a tie score. They both had 15 points. And because of this, and because of how really major and big this show was, and it was a direct tie across the board, we wanted to bring them out for one more round, basically call it a tiebreaker round, to break this tie. And before I get into the poses, I feel like at this point, when we brought them back out, I can see why Derek took the victory, because I felt like he filled out and also was definitely tighter. The lines in his physique were deeper. And at this point, I thought Nick actually had flattened out just a little bit as well. And I'll go into detail with the poses and everything else, but I feel like these little small things are what gave Derek that separation that he needed. And again, you guys probably don't even understand, but these guys' bodies change so quickly. So, had that been maybe 15 minutes later, 15 minutes earlier, who knows how this ends up, because their bodies change that fast. But once we found out it was a tie score, we went backstage, we had the expediters tell them, gave them plenty of time to know that, after Classic Physique was over, that we would be bringing those two out alone first before any individual routine started for the open men. So they were prepared, they were ready, and honestly, the battle was unbelievable. As a judge, obviously, it was insanely hard to judge, but as a fan and then hearing the environment and also the fans, it was crazy. It was an amazing atmosphere. So again, props to both Nick and Derek. I mean, it was just awesome. So let's get into it. Front double bicep. I felt like this was one of the poses that was more clear for Derek. Now, in the front double bicep, obviously Nick has better arms. Nick has some of, if not the best arms, at least top 2 arms in the pro league. Now, get into the rest of the pose. Derek has wide flaring lats into a small waist. Nick's front double is the best I think it's looked. His waist definitely came in. It definitely came in from New York last year. I think it's the best it's been. Going to the lower body, and basically a weakness for both of these guys are their quads from the front, their leg width, how their quads look. Now for Nick, I think this was the best his quads have looked in his career. For me, for sure, I think they came up a little bit. I think the waist coming in a little bit also helps that illusion. For Derek, I felt like this was a middle of the road show for his legs. They were not as big and as full as they were at the Arnold. But when you're looking at these guys straight on, the amount of room that their legs take up is very similar, at least in my opinion. And when you go with the overall flow of this pose and the detail, I think Derek takes it. It's just a more pleasing pose because, again, Nick's waist just is still wider than Derek's. So when they're next to each other, I think Derek's able to overcome the lacking in the arms compared to Nick with his strengths in every other part of this pose. I think they both brought pretty good detail and separation to their quads too as well. Nick's gets a little bit blurry in the upper quad, but Derek also, his legs weren't as big and as full as the Arnold. So the lines I feel like weren't as deep as the Arnold. So everybody was expecting, what he brought to the Arnold. He didn't quite get that here, but we're just looking compared to Nick and Derek to each other on stage. So for me, this was a Derek pose to make it 1-0. The next pose is the front lat spread. Now, this was definitely for Derek his most clear win in a pose. Why is that? Because this is Nick's worst pose. Nick has definitely done a good job of trying to improve it, but still for him, his chest looks a little flat. The waist looks a little bit wide here. He's not really able to get the lats out in this pose the way that he's able to do it on the back lat spread. When you combine all this with his upper body, and then, his lower body obviously looked the best it did, but still the upper body and what he's lacking here really shows through. For Derek, this pose is becoming actually more of a strength for him. The lats are out. They're very wide. He's showing much better thickness in his chest. For Derek, his arms on the inside, like in the front double bicep, they lack detail, and obviously they don't have the peak of Nick and some others, but his outer arm detail and shoulders have improved a lot. If you look at this pose and really look at it, you don't really see that Derek's arms and shoulders are lacking compared to Nick's. I think they're very comparable. Then again, you go into the waist, the midsection. Derek's midsection is such a strength for him. Very small and it was tight. And then again, the lower body, I feel like there was still enough balance between his upper body to make this a clear pose for him. So right now, 2 poses to 0 for Derek. Now we're going to move into the side chest pose. This pose, I feel like, was a very, very close pose. Again, we had went over before, Derek improved the way he's hit this pose a lot. His upper body, the width that he displays from shoulder to shoulder, his chest is much thicker. He even shows some striations now and some detail through that chest, which he was lacking before. Again, the waist is tight. I said the outer arm and shoulder for Derek actually shows detail and has become more of a strength for him when it used to be more of a weakness. Derek's side leg is always very, very good. You see the deep lines and separation in his side leg. However, again, I feel like we're comparing him to his best, which was the Arnold. I feel like still he was lacking, or he dropped just a little bit of that leg width from the side here. Now we go to Nick. Nick's arms and shoulders, of course, are great. His chest, I feel like he has improved, but that is a weaker spot for him. Derek has actually surpassed him, in my opinion, in the chest development part. Nick brings that back shoulder over just a little bit too much for me as well. He could display more width here because his shoulders are so wide. When he crunches over with that back arm, it takes away from some of his width. I mean, this pose obviously is very, very impressive for him, but he could still make this even more impressive. Nick, while he was in these poses, once he got settled in, his waist control was good, so his waist looked pretty solid here. And then Nick's side leg was really, really good at this show. Absolutely huge. Really, Derek normally has a side leg that's not only more conditioned, but bigger than every other person when he's going against him, other than a couple bodybuilders in the pro league. Nick is one of them. Nick's side leg was gigantic. Very good balance between the quads and the hamstrings. Good conditioning. Good lines. Not quite as many lines in separation as Derek, but the conditioning was still great. The lines that he does have were deep. And I thought this was a pose where Nick's muscularity really, really shined through. Now, like I said before, if you told me because of the reasons I just listed that you had Derek, I can see that. For me, the conditioning and just the muscularity, especially in that side leg, I thought was super impressive. And really, we posed him so much, I was going back and forth, but at the end of the day, I gave Nick this pose to make it 2 poses to 1. Next up is the back double bicep pose. I think this pose was the biggest surprise of the show, in my opinion. And why is that? Normally, when you turn to the back and you hit the 2 back poses, it's lights out for Derek against basically every competitor in the pro league. That was not the case at this show, in my opinion. Nick's back improved tremendously. If you even look at his past showings, Nick's always had a great back, but he does not have that depth and 3D look to it. Especially when you're close up to him, it's normally a little bit on the flatter side. That was not the case here. That depth and 3D look was brought by Nick. And is his back as deep and as thick as Derek's? No. But the back itself was very, very comparable. Now let's go into the rest of the pose. The shoulders and the arms on Nick from the back might be even more impressive than they look from the front. I mean, absolutely cannonball delts. The biceps are perfectly peaked. The detail that he has in his arms is crazy. Derek was hitting this pose, I think, and not rotating his shoulders back enough. So while Derek's, again, outer arms and shoulders, I told you, are not as much of a weakness and actually turning into pretty good for him. In this pose, when the arms aren't rotated, the biceps look flatter than they normally are, and his shoulder development, while very good, is not quite the same as Nick's. Now going to the lower body, their conditioning was very, very similar. I really thought throughout, not only prejudging and in finals, it was going back and forth with how really tight each one was getting. I felt like at some points, I felt like Derek's lines were deeper. His conditioning was a little better than at some points. I felt like it was Nick's. Really, it was changing throughout how much we worked these guys. But Derek's conditioning was obviously very good in the lower body as well. His hamstrings are always stripped. The glutes are in. His leg width is pretty good, is normally solid, but this is one of the areas he can still work on, the leg width from the front and the back. And at this show, when you go over and you compare his leg width to Nick's legs looked massive from the back. His glutes are still in. While, again, the lines that Derek displays in the lower body are crazy. Almost nobody can match it. Nick, I thought, was close to matching those lines and that detail in the lower body as well. So not only did he have the size, he had the detail. Put everything that I just said together, and I feel like Nick beats Derek in the back double bicep at this show. His back was very, very comparable. His waist from the back in this pose looks so tiny. So how he hits this pose is incredible to me. Derek obviously has that small waist. His back is better, but the limbs is what sets Nick apart. And I feel like he barely loses in the back part, barely, seriously, at this show to Derek, and he beat him with every other part of this pose. So for me, I gave this pose to Nick to make it 2 poses to 2. Next up is the back lat spread pose. So obviously in the back lat spread, the arms are more taken out, right, than obviously the back double bicep. The arms are much more of a focal point in the back double bicep. So for me, I felt like this pose, again, was very, very close. At some points, I really thought I was going to give this pose to Nick, but at the end of the day, I ended up giving it to Derek just by a hair. And I think that's pretty crazy still because, as you can see from the videos and the pictures, Derek's back is insanely thick, insanely 3D looking, and he still, a lot of the times, was not opening it up all the way. Derek, when he opens up this back lat spread all the way, and he'll do it consistently, will be extremely tough for anybody to handle because you're looking basically, you have the rear delts of the shoulders, but other than that, you have that whole entire back and then the whole entire lower body. His back is so overwhelming when this pose is hit correctly that it's hard for anybody to match up against him. However, he wasn't opening up quite all the way, so that width, which is still crazy, could have been even crazier. For Nick, the back lat spread has improved a ton. Again, I feel like his waist looks so much smaller here from the back than it does from the front, and his lower body, like I just said, was absolutely incredible. Now when we're balancing back to legs here, I felt like for me that Nick's back still in this back lat spread still could have more of that depth and thickness. I think it displays much better in the back double than it does in the back lat spread.
I definitely comprehend why he has to explain to the world what happened in that show, the reason why they give it to Derek. Yeah, that is quite understandable for him to explain the criteria they use in the finals. But that doesn't change my opinion, my belief that Nick won that show, right? Everybody have their opinion. So opinion is like an asshole. Everybody got one. So with that being said, folks, what do you guys think? I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you guys believe or buy into what he said? You know, but for me, I understand. I could see that the poses are close, everything, but I still believe that was Nick's show to win, and exactly what he said. From the back shot, ball shot, last spread, and double bites, I give both to Nick, and Nick won that show. We all know that. But whatsoever reason the judges decide to give it to Derek, cool, that's good. But like I always say, please don't come to my comment section calling people names and cussing. We don't do that here. It's okay to be objective. It's okay. Don't forget, this sport is a subjective sport. So you have your favorite, but that doesn't mean your favorite is fighting the other competitor, right? So please, let's be respectful and let's keep it like an adult and talk to each other like an adult. Please subscribe, share, comment. Don't forget to turn on the notification button so whenever I upload, you guys know. YouTube is really doing me dirty right these days. They don't even push my content like they used to do. So please, that's the only way you can help me. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to like. All that matters a lot. That's the only thing you can do for me. And don't forget, subscription and all of that is free, folks. It's free. God bless you and have a wonderful day. Peace. I'm out.